Hey everybody, welcome. Hunt Club Podcast. Woj again. Flying solo again. I got um couple things I need to get off the old chest here. This is a combo in full transparency. This is a combo Hunt Club podcast show. This is something that we've been talking about internally at Vectra for a while and been talking to industry analysts about this. And kind of figuring out, from a cybermine's perspective, why the definition of NDR needs to change. That's one kind of area that I want to explore today. And full transparency, I'm a product marketing guy, so uh, rooted in like that first, like the essence of like what we're trying to solve for, right? So I'm gonna do a combo cybermines, why the definition of NDR needs to change, and combo product briefing, modern network, modern attack. You've heard me talk and rant about this in the first, maybe you have if you've watched the first Cyberminds episode we did on modern networks, modern attacks, and the need for like modern NDR platforms. So I'm going to walk through kind of just, I just want to, kind of just like get it off my chest and talk about how we think about the problem that needs to be solved through the lens of NDR. And NDR is a hot topic. This is me. I lead product marketing. If you haven't tuned into a podcast before, you see me quite a bit. Members of my team, other super smart people at Vectra, at partners. We're bringing on some customers. So, I lead product marketing, and I love talking about um, kind of the challenges buyers face, the evolution of different technologies and platforms, um, problems and challenges that SOC teams have, and how do we go about thinking about our approach to those challenges. One thing that you'll learn about me if you tune into podcasts regularly is I think in threes. Everything's in threes. I think I drive people crazy with trying to narrow things down to like three things because I think the human mind can process three things, remember three things. So you're going to see some three things. You're going to see, some of this. I'm going to walk you through like a bunch of different slides or visuals that you'll see kind of a theme around three things. And when we think about, when we've been thinking about, God, is the definition of network detection and response, if you read the definition, Google search it, what is network detection and response? You're going to see like an old school definition of NDR, is really good at getting network telemetry, right, to uncover threats inside the environment. And yeah, sure, network telemetry, but I think it's much more than that. I think it needs to be much more than that. I think that the network has evolved, and the definition of the network has evolved, and you've heard us rant about that. But fundamentally, I think it's rooted in, here we go, three macro trends. I think there's three macro trends, high level, that are driving this NDR market. And if you haven't noticed, NDR is heating up. Like I can't think of an analyst firm that hasn't pinged us for briefings on NDR because they have an NDR out or a ranking or whatever it might be. NDR steam, and I'm like, why is that? Why is it a hot topic? And we've kind of boiled it down to these kind of three things, kind of outside in perspective. The network's just getting a lot more complex. You're going to hear us talk about a little bit about we still have a signal efficacy problem. We still have a problem as an industry, not just as an NDR, but as an industry around delivering accurate signal to the SOC analyst. I'll talk a little bit about that. I don't want to belabor that pain point. I think it's been talked about ad nauseum, but it hasn't necessarily been solved, which puts us into which questions like, is the way we are doing things, is the way we're doing threat detection and response right? If the problem hasn't been solved around alert noise, then we're doing something wrong. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then the third big macro trend is the kind of the modernization of attacks around identity, and the probability that any kind of cyber attack you're going to fall privy to is largely going to center around an identity. And what does that mean in the whole scheme of things? So these three things, I think we think of these three things as driving the NDR market and kind of interest and resurgence of NDR in conversations. But before we get into that, I think that there's a fundamental acknowledgement that the network is evolving. The network has changed. The very definition of the network. Now, if we continue to believe the network is that traditional boundary of data center, Active Directory, I got a campus environment, that's my network, there's no way we're going to keep pace with the way modern attackers operate. We just can't think of that network. The network is in that fashion anymore. Look at what has happened in the last 5 years, right? We've got a massive shift to remote work that happened literally overnight in May of 2020. Right now, what is it? 80% of the workforce is hybrid. So when we think about remote work, there was that initial shift. That shift drove adoption, mass adoption of collaboration tools and productivity tools. So SaaS exploded, right? Workloads started shifting to cloud data centers. Identities becoming the perimeter for the cloud. SASE, SSE technologies were adopted and put into use to help protect this expansive network. So first thing we have to kind of get our minds out of thinking that the network is this traditional boundary. And we view the network as this kind of complex hybrid environment that is constantly evolving. New devices, new identities, new accounts, new SaaS applications, they're all part of the network. So that's the first kind of mind shift that needs to happen. Second, this is research we continue to do, State of Threat Detection Report. We've done it for 2 years now. The third, 2025 version's coming out later, I think in a couple months now. And we just hear this over and over again, right? I don't want to belabor this. It's like, but the crux of the issue is alert noise is a problem. Fidelity is a bigger problem. I think of like the upstream problem is how do we just deliver accurate signal to the SOC? And this isn't getting any better, and it's completely crushing confidence. I'm not going to read these stats. You can kind of see them on screen if you're watching. But too many alerts. You're selling us tools that deliver too many alerts. This screams to me that the approach is fundamentally flawed. Right? So the network's evolving. It's much bigger and broader, the definition of the network. Two, we got to do something about the alert problem, right? It's just crushing confidence, and there's all kinds of different, it's questioning the approach. Third big thing is what I alluded to, like identity attack probability. This is what these guys are doing. Right? They do we call them modern attackers. They thrive in this complexity of the network. They thrive in alert noise. They can hide, they can move laterally, they can progress, they can look like an employee. And they're fundamentally, if you break it down, doing four things, no matter the attack group, no matter, they're fundamentally doing four things really well. Bypassing controls, whether that's an endpoint control, network control, doesn't matter. They're finding their way in, they're compromising an account, they're going to establish command and control, they're going to move laterally. Now, if you look at CrowdStrike's threat data from their threat report, 48 minutes. It was down from 62 minutes from initial compromise to lateral movement. It's only getting faster. They're escalating their privileges, using Gen AI, whether it's co-pilots or whatnot, to do recon and discovery and move laterally inside the environment with a privileged account, accessing data, critical systems, and they're doing this across what we call the modern network. Traditional data center, campus, Active Directory environment, moving into cloud identity with, in this case, Entra ID, moving into SaaS applications, and ultimately, or cloud data centers, ultimately finding and locating. And they're doing this extremely fast. More often than not, we think that, we know that identity attacks often become cloud attacks. And there's this belief that posture is one piece of the equation, but we believe fundamentally NDR, threat detection and response, but specifically NDR, plays a critical role in an organization's posture, both pre-compromise and post-compromise, to a modern attack. Right. So in this visual, it's like, where is posture effective? If it's effective at understanding where you have misconfigurations or potential vulnerabilities and exploits, policy violations, et cetera. But where NDR in this case, and how NDR needs to evolve, is it needs to understand where the hidden threats are. And a lot of those are identity based, rooted in credential theft, that move laterally extremely fast, exfiltrating data, exploiting 0 days. So how do you begin to think about defending against modern attacks given the complexity of the modern network? Now, this is where I shift the conversation from, hey, let's change the way we think about the network. Let's change the way we think about attackers. Let's change the way we think about our approach to defending against those attackers, to, full transparency. I'm a Vectra product guy, to how do we do it, right? What is that fundamental change in approach or thinking? Back to my three things. You've heard us, if you've tuned into Vectra podcasts in the past, if you've talked to us in the past, the three C's have kind of ground us in almost everything we do. And we think this simple grounding is critical, right? I know it's a complex problem. I know the network's complex. I know what security people do is super complex. But sometimes we have to think simplistically about what are we trying to solve for and how do we go about doing it. And we believe it's these three C's. Fundamentally, if we all agree the network is expansive, it's hybrid, it's ever changing and evolving, you got to cover that network, right? Coverage is going to reduce exposure to a multi-domain attack. 40% of successful breaches over the last year were multi-domain. They spanned multiple environments. So cover those environments. In the old world, this would be considered visibility, but visibility is one thing. It's like I'll talk a little bit about coverage. Second thing, clarity. We've got to figure out how we arrive at attack signal clarity, because clarity is going to increase accuracy of that alert we send to the SOC. It's also going to remove noise, and most importantly, remove latency. The worst thing we can give the attacker is more time. So how do we find and remove latency from our workloads, from our detection capabilities, from our prioritization? I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by clarity. And then the third is, ultimately, we want to take control of the attack, and we want to take control of the attack early in its progression, speeding our mean time to identify, contain, whatever it might be, investigate, respond, etc. We want to put control in the hands of the human, the analyst, maximize their talent, investigating and stopping attacks. You can do that through taking control of an identity-based attack. So three fundamental things: coverage, clarity, and control. We always think coverage, clarity, and control. From a coverage perspective, it isn't just about visibility across those domains, but it's about understanding what attackers do in each one of those domains through the cyber kill chain, right? So have we built behavioral-based AI detections to cover what attackers do across network, identity, and cloud? If you zoom in on those detections, you can see a wide breadth of detections across data center, network, campus, infrastructure as a service, cloud identity, or whatever. We provide that coverage, domain specific of what an attacker might do or is proven to do inside of those different repositories. For example, take that same modern attack we used earlier. In this case, it was Mango Sandstorm. It's like, are there detections at each stage of this attack? What AI detections are fired? Right? And you can see through the span of the attack, there are different detections that are behavioral-based detections that are fired, kind of indicating what the attacker is doing and how they're progressing through the environment. So that's going to give you, yes, we have this attack covered. We have this multi-domain attack covered. And this is one example. We've got dozens of examples like this. The coverage is one thing, right? So if the take control of the attack, go back to coverage, clarity, and control. The ultimate goal is to take control of the attack early in its progression, right? And we'll get to that. You cannot take control of the attack if all you have is coverage, right? That's that missing piece in the middle, which is clarity. Clarity is what's going to increase your signal accuracy and remove latency in processes. So we think about it through the lens of AI agents, right? And again, here's back to my three, power of three. We have three fundamental AI agents that deliver clarity, to deliver signal clarity. AI triage, leverage an AI agent to learn what's important and automatically resolve and remove and log benign activities. It's proven to reduce the analyst time spent by 51% on pure triaging alerts. Um, Once those alerts are triaged, stitch them together. Use an AI stitching agent that connects the dots, that can see what an attacker is doing across domains. Assign them to an entity, a host or an account. This is proven to boost efficiency of the SOC by 40%, if not more. And then thirdly, an agent, can an AI agent prioritize, score, and rank an entity based on the attack profile, based on how fast it's moving, based on unique behaviors, based on context from those detections and from other tools? Can it stitch all that together and prioritize the entity that the analyst, that the human being needs to look at? Spend 60% less time assessing and prioritizing alerts. So we are shrinking, this is that alert noise problem. We are like shifting the mindset from I'm looking at individual threat detections to I'm looking at an entity. I'm looking at a prioritized entity made up of different detections. What that looks like, here's an example. Here's an example of like, AI agents at work or signal clarity. And we've got a number of different things, but this is the ultimate goal, right? Still have that visibility and that coverage. In this case, 145,000 hosts monitor 141,000 events. Those events were attributed to 5,500 hosts, but only 24 hosts were prioritized in a 90-day period. This is signal. There's 24 critical things that you need to look at over the course. This will differ customer by customer, industry by industry, environment by environment. So signal clarity is going to shrink that workload or that, focus from alerts and threat events and potential threat events to here are malicious attacks underway, right? Or malicious activity in your environment tied to this host that you need to look at. You might find out that it is benign, but it was a true positive, true benign, benign true positive. In many cases, malicious true positive, giving the analyst the work that they need to focus on. But you don't stop there, right? You got the coverage, which is basically detection of attacker behavior across domains. We know modern attacks are multi-domain. Clarity, give them rich signal that's accurate, remove latency from manual processes, do that using AI agents to take control of the attack. Now, how does a human take control of attack? Leveraging, in our case, it's like there's gold in metadata. How do you spend less time investigating false positives or fake alerts or whatever they are, right? How do you graph attacks? How do you cut down investigation time by pulling all of the necessary context around that prioritized entity together into one view so that the analyst can look and diagnose and assess and dig into what the attack is doing? How do you enable the analyst to run advanced queries, to look for other indicators of compromise or attack across the environment? You do that with metadata. 25 different types, 300 fields, ingesting a ton of data a day for an analyst to leverage around context. Armed with that metadata and that understanding of the attack and context, they can take response action, right? Whether it's automated, locking down the account, isolating the host, or locking down the identity. They could issue a playbook, whatever response automation that customer is doing, make sure that you fit into that workflow, right? And they can take action on it, whether it's in-house or through a managed service provider or an NDR service. Here's an example if you put all that together, right? Same attack, right? And we worked with Vectra NDR analysts on this, but the same attack, hypothetically, this will change, differ customer by customer, but imagine if we prioritize the host at 1 o'clock in the morning. The attacker was doing this at the point that they accessed Entra ID, bypassed MFA in coordination with the other activities they did previous to that. We have prioritized this entity. This looks like an attack underway at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see our detections there that fired. We continue to detect activity, but we've prioritized it at this point. Analyst assesses that alert within 15 minutes, validates the attack by 1:23. This is where instant investigations, advanced investigations comes in, really fast investigation response time. They take response action and they write up the report. 40 minutes. Ironically, what did CrowdStrike say? 48 minutes from infiltration to lateral movement. All about trying to find these attacks and stopping them early in their progression. That's ultimately the goal of coverage, clarity, and control. If we're able to do that, if we're able to shrink, decrease, boost or speed mean time to identify and contain an attack, imagine the time that frees up for an analyst, for a SOC team to work on other, not necessarily more pressing, but more high value projects, right? Enter the other aspect of control. How does it help maximize analyst time and talent on things that are important to the business? We call this peacetime value, all kinds of different value reporting built into the NDR platform. This is through the lens of like, how do we've got the reactive piece of threat detection and response for active attacks in the environment. If we're able to do that through coverage, clarity, and control efficiently and effectively, we free up time for more proactive, preemptive defense, right? And we know that there's a need to shift from, constantly being threat detection, and this is another fundamental debate around the definition of NDR. Even the notion of network detection and response in its current definition is it's a reactive tool, right? We believe it's a proactive tool as much as it is a reactive tool and has the potential to be that. So how do you do that through value reporting? How do you do that through visibility, system visibility and health, and maintaining the hygiene and health of the platform? And how do you do that third, another three thing, network security posture management was called. This is the notion of like, how do you stop attacks before they start? Understanding what's happening in your environment, et cetera, et cetera. So coverage, clarity, control. At the end of the day, how do you like arm the human being to be good at what the human being is good at? How do you free them up to do things and start to take a more proactive, preemptive approach to cyber defense? Big piece of where we believe NDR is and is going as a platform. And then a whole host of benefits of taking that sort of approach, right? If we can shore up, from a coverage, clarity, and control perspective, if we can view the network holistically as this massive, ever-changing hybrid environment, and not in isolation as traditional data center and campus and Active Directory, if we can use AI agents to remove latency from SOC analysts' workflow, if we can put the analysts in control of attacks early and free up their time to take a proactive, preemptive approach to network defense and network protection, modern network protection against modern attacks. I'm not going to go through each one of these stats, but you start to see the benefits in terms of efficiency gains. You start to see the benefits of like shifting from manual, mundane, everyday tasks to actually meaningful, valuable work that a human being can do, right? Creative thinking, creative problem solving, intuition, et cetera, et cetera. You begin to see those efficiency gains through the lens of an NDR platform and what an NDR platform can do for a SOC team. We hear it over and over again. Selfless plug. We've been testing this approach in this, to NDR, over to platform, to threat detection response platform for the last 3 years, and we hear the same sorts of things, right? And we're getting validation from customers. Yes, coverage. Fundamentally, I need coverage for my modern network. It's going to reduce my exposure. Here's identifying threats that we wouldn't have otherwise identified. Clarity about removing that latency. What used to take months now takes minutes, right? In terms of shrinking that window of time that someone spends on kind of the manual, mundane approach to threat detection, shifting from a detection mindset to a prioritization mindset, from events to entities. That's going to remove latency. That's going to remove that latency. At the end of the day, we want to maximize the people we have in house, whether they're engineers, architects, analysts, and control does that. Put them in control. Put them in a position to focus on what matters most to the business. And we do that through what we believe is modern NDR platform. Agentless deploy, flexibility of deployment. Yes, it could be air gapped for customers that are completely air gapped. It's scalable, it's flexible and modular. It's got a SaaS interface. It's backed by services. It's MSSP friendly. A lot of people are using MSSPs and expanding their footprint within MSSP partners. It's integration and ecosystem friendly. With our, with the mentioned CrowdStrike, whether it's Microsoft, AWS, you name the technology, does it integrate well into your environments? And that is, fundamentally how we think about, go back to the beginning. It's like, gosh, we need to change the definition of NDR, right? Why? Because the network has evolved and the network has changed, right? Modern network, modern attack, modern NDR platform. If I want to comment on this, please, because, we've got a bunch of podcasts. This is I'm super passionate about this topic. And I want to understand it. If this resonates, is this, do you agree, disagree? Let's at least start the conversation. That's how I think about it. That's my rant. Please comment, share, subscribe, check out our other podcasts. We're going to keep talking about this topic because I think it's important to kind of continue talking about it and having these open, honest, conversations, sometimes debates. So I'm open to it. So with that, I'm Woj. Thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate the time. Thanks, everybody.